Hi guys, welcome back to the program. My name is Brad. This is the Firefighter's Financial Toolbox. The other day I made a video as a request to one of my subscribers about T. Rowe Price. And in the comments of that video, I actually had another subscriber, Matt Price, ask me to do a video on Voya. He has a 457 plan with Voya, as do I. You guys, 457 plans, if you're not familiar with them, they're like a 401k for government employees. So if you work for the state, if you work for a fire department, if you work for a police department, and even in some cases, you might even work, for example, public works for your county. It's basically the same thing. It's a deferred compensation qualified plan that lets you save money. Two biggest differences are you do not get a match from your employer in a 457 because if they did, it would count towards your contribution. So that doesn't work. We do get a match at my fire department, but they put it into a 401a, which is a separate account, because that way it doesn't count against my contribution. The other difference, and the biggest difference, is that you don't have the 59.5 rule. You can take out money as soon as you separate from employment. So if you got retired at, say, 50 years old, or if you got hurt and you're on disability, you could actually draw money from that account starting when you separate. So he wanted me to do some talking about different funds and which ones I thought would be worthwhile. Now, you guys, we're going to go ahead and skip right into there's two different kinds of things, depending on how much you're into investing. If you just want to set it and forget it, sometimes the target date funds are a great option, because what happens with those is you have a mix of American stocks, international stocks, and bonds. And as it starts out really aggressive, and as you get closer to retirement, it tends to get more conservative. And you see that now each Voya plan may have little different ones, but for the most part, they're going to have a lot of the same. But let's break it down and let's consider us being young people who want to get stocks, because really that's what's going to grow your portfolio the most, right? All right, so let's start here with you got large cap value, you've got large cap growth. So the fund that I'm personally in is the Voya Russell Large Cap Index. Now, you guys, you know I'm a big fan of index funds, and here's why. A lot of 457 plans are expensive, and the funds in them tend to be expensive as well. Now, this fund has a gross expense ratio of 0.39%. So what does that mean? It means I'm paying $39 for every $10,000 I have invested every year. Now, that's way more expensive than I have in all my other plans. But because this is all I'm offered, I keep it in here. This is the lowest cost large cap, which is basically an S&P 500 fund, you guys. Now, if we take a look at the other options here, now let's do the Voya Index Plus Large Cap. Now, that is also an index fund, right? But you see this one actually cost 49 basis points. So at $10 more per thousand per year for essentially the same fund, you guys. Doesn't make sense. Now, what if I wanted a growth fund? So here's the large cap growth portfolio. You see that one's 0.67%, so even higher. Okay, let's take a look at mid caps. Now, you guys remember, small and mid caps are going to be a little bit more expensive. So let's go down and look at the Voya Russell Small Cap Index. This one has an expense ratio of 0.47%. So 8 basis points more than my S&P 500 fund, you guys. Pretty inexpensive compared to some of the others. Let's take a look at some of the others here. Let's look at the Franklin Small Cap Value, for example. This fund is 92 basis points, 0.92%, you guys. Almost a whole percent. But let's stay within the Voya family here. Let's look at the Voya Small Company Portfolio. So this is a Voya fund as well. And you see 0.90%. So almost 1%. 90 basis points, you guys. Very expensive. So let's look at mid-cap. Let's say you want some mid-cap. So let's look at the Voya Russell Mid-Cap Index. We see that this one is about, it's 0.46%, so 46 basis points. Now let's go up and look at the other Voya Mid-Cap Fund. We find that this one, the Voya Mid-Cap Opportunities Portfolio, is 0.78%. So here's the thing, you guys. Remember that large cap or S&P 500 companies make up about 70 to 75% of the total U.S. market. Now, there's lots of small and mid-cap companies, but they only make up about 25 to 30% of the total market. So if you were to have an S&P 500 or a large cap and you had a small cap, you would capture most of the market as far as the United States. And all this needs to be considered when you're talking about expenses. So let's look at international. Now, the only one that I know, I don't have this fund any longer because I have it in my wife's Roth, but the Voya International Index. Now, international funds are more expensive, you guys. And you see that this one has a gross expense ratio of 0.54%. So 54 basis points, or $54 on $10,000 per year in that fund. If we look at something like the Invesco Oppenheimer Global Portfolio, you guys, 0.75% for an ER, 75 basis points. And then if you get into something specialty, and we're going to look at the JP Morgan Emerging Markets Fund here. You guys, this one is super expensive. 1.11%, $111 per 10,000 on this one. So I wouldn't recommend putting emerging markets in your 457 if you have Voya. If you want emerging markets, or if you have a Roth, maybe that's where you put it because you have more room for growth there, but you can certainly get it from Vanguard, Fidelity, or Charles Schwab, and you can get a fund that's much, much cheaper than that, you guys. So if I had to pick the 4 funds I would use, and since we're here, we'll start with the global or the international fund. I would pick the Voya International Index because it's relatively inexpensive compared to the other offerings. Now, I personally only use the Voya Russell Large Cap Index in this account. As I said, this is mainly a S&P 500 index. It's not exactly. It's pretty close, though. It's basically all the large cap companies. Now, that's the one I would recommend because it is the least expensive at just 39 basis points. Now, if I wanted to add small and mid caps, I would probably add just the Voya Russell Small Cap Index. If you did want to add some bonds, and I used to have this fund at one point, now I have all of our bonds in my wife's rollover. I used to keep it in the Voya Intermediate Bond Portfolio. Now, but you do see this is an expense ratio of 0.55%. So over 0.5%, you guys, and right now bonds aren't making much. So although I may add more bonds to my portfolio later on or when I'm retired, at this point it's too expensive for me to keep it here. I have my bonds in the Vanguard Total Bond Market Index and my wife's rollover, and that costs 4 basis points instead of 55. So big difference, you guys. I'd like to thank Matt Price for asking the question. It was easy for me because I have an account. I did skip right into the funds, you guys, instead of logging in front of you. But I think when you pick your funds, no matter what you have, if you have a 401k, a 403b, a 457, you guys, it's important that you take a second and really look at the offerings and look at the expense ratios because they can cost you a lot of money, especially over a career. And that goes up each year as your balance gets higher. So really consider that when you're going. Okay, you guys? Thanks for coming out. If you got something out of this, you guys, drop me a like, thumbs up. Really helps the algorithm. If you're not already subscribed, hit the button, ring the bell. You'll get notified when I make every video. And we'll see you again. Thanks a lot.